The Dominion had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire spread across 300 star systems. Their ships were the fastest. Their weapons were the strongest. Their people believed they were the greatest species in the galaxy, and for a very long time, no one could prove them wrong. But deep inside their oldest libraries, locked away in crystal vaults that few were allowed to enter, there were strange records. These records spoke of another species, a species called humans. The stories said humans were strange creatures. They walked on two legs. They had soft skin with no scales or armor. They had no claws, no fangs, no venom. They could not see in the dark. They could not breathe underwater. They seemed weak in every way that mattered. Yet the ancient records called them dangerous. The old texts used words like persistent and adaptable and relentless. One passage, written by a long-dead scholar, simply said, "Do not make them your enemy. They do not know how to stop." Most laughed at these stories. They were clearly myths, fairy tales told to children. The High Council taught that humans had destroyed themselves in wars long ago. Some scholars said humans never existed at all. They were just stories, nothing more. Commander did not laugh at the stories. She was a young officer serving aboard the battle cruiser Eternal Dawn. She had green scales and yellow eyes, like most of her people. She was smart and brave and very good at her job, but she had one weakness that her fellow officers often mocked. She was fascinated by the human myths. Her grandmother had told her the stories when she was small. The old female would hold a close and speak in a quiet voice about the creatures from the ancient times. They were not strong, her grandmother would say. They were not fast, but they had something else, something that made the old empires fear them. What was it? Younga would ask. They never gave up, her grandmother replied. You could hurt them and they would keep coming. You could chase them and they would turn and chase you back. They would follow their prey for days without stopping. They would cross deserts and mountains and oceans. They treated wounds that should have killed them and stood back up to fight. The old ones called them persistence predators. Once they decided to do something, nothing in the universe could stop them. A grew up and joined the military. She learned that the universe was a logical place. Ships followed the laws of physics. Battles were won by superior firepower and better tactics. There was no room for fairy tales. But she never forgot her grandmother's words. Now she stood on the bridge of the eternal dawn and watched the stars burn. The Dominion was at war, and the war was going very badly. The enemy was called the Collective. They came from the far edge of the galaxy. They were creatures with hard shells and sharp claws. They did not think as individuals. They shared one mind, one purpose, and that purpose was to consume everything in their path. They had appeared 6 months ago. At first, they did not take them seriously. They were just bugs, after all. How dangerous could bugs be? The answer came quickly. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They did not want territory or resources or slaves. They simply wanted to kill. Every world they touched went silent. Every colony they reached was stripped bare. Billions died in the first month alone. The Dominion's military, which had grown lazy after thousands of years of peace, could not stop them. Ship after ship was destroyed. Fleet after fleet was scattered. They kept coming, wave after wave, endless and hungry. Watched the reports come in every day. Another system lost. Another million dead. Another fleet destroyed. The numbers were so large that they stopped feeling real. The High Council met in emergency sessions every day. Some wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to surrender. A few still believed they could fight, but everyone was afraid. I could see it in their eyes when their faces appeared on the communication screens. The mighty rulers of 300 worlds were terrified. And they had every right to be. A's ship was stationed at a listening outpost on the edge of space. Her job was to watch for movements and report them to command. It was boring work, but it was safe. They had not come to this sector yet. She spent her free time reading the old records about humans. She did not know why she was so drawn to them. Perhaps it was because she needed to believe that something could stop the. Perhaps she just needed hope. The record said humans came from a small blue planet called Earth. They had spread across the stars slowly, building colonies and making alliances. They were not conquerors like the. They were explorers, traders, diplomats. But when threatened, they became something else entirely. One record described a human colony that was attacked by raiders. The colony had no military. The people were farmers and scientists. Everyone expected them to surrender or die. Instead, they fought back with farming tools and mining equipment. They set traps. They launched ambushes. They refused to give up even when their situation was hopeless. The battle lasted for 3 weeks. When reinforcements finally arrived, the raiders were gone. The humans had driven them away. "Impossible," a whispered as she read. "No one fights like that." But the record said they did. Again and again, the stories showed the same pattern. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not give up. Humans found a way to win, or they died trying. What happened to them? I wondered. Where did they go? If they were real, if they were as stubborn as the stories said, how could they simply disappear? She did not know the answer. No one did. The record simply stopped 8,000 years ago. One day humans were there, and the next they were gone. Some said they destroyed themselves. Some said they were wiped out by an enemy. Some said they fled to the edges of the galaxy and vanished into the void. I stared out the window at the cold stars. Somewhere out there they were coming. Somewhere out there her people were dying. And somewhere out there, maybe, the humans were still waiting. She did not really believe it. But sometimes, late at night when the ship was quiet and the stars seemed very far away, she let herself hope. She had no idea that her hope was about to become real. The signal came on a quiet night when nothing was supposed to happen. I was alone in the listening station, watching her screens and fighting to stay awake. Her shift was almost over. She was thinking about sleep and food and anything except her job. That was when the alert went off. At first she thought it was a mistake. The signal was coming from deep space, far beyond the edge of territory. No one lived out there. No one had ever lived out there. It was empty void, cold and dead and silent. But the signal was real. It pulsed steadily, over and over like a heartbeat in the darkness. I ran a scan. The signal was not any language pattern in her computer's database. The computer simply said, unknown origin, unknown language, age of transmission protocol, approximately 8,000 years. 8,000 years. A's heart began to beat faster. That was the same time the human records had stopped. That was when they had disappeared. She activated her translation software and fed the signal into it. The computer worked for a long time. Minutes passed, then hours. I should have reported the signal to her superiors, but something made her wait. She needed to know what it said first. Finally, the translation appeared on her screen. "This is Captain Daniel of the Earth vessel constellation. We have been monitoring your conflict. We are prepared to offer assistance. Respond on this frequency if you wish to negotiate." I read the message 3 times. Then she read it again. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was racing. This could not be real. Humans were myths. Humans were gone. Everyone knew this. But the message was there, glowing on her screen. And it was addressed to the. She had to tell someone. The next few hours were chaos. I reported the signal to her captain. Her captain reported it to the admiral. The admiral reported it to the High Council. Within a day, the entire government was talking about the impossible message from the void. Most of them did not believe it. "This is a trick," said Admiral OK, a decorated officer with silver scales and cold eyes. "They are trying to lure us into a trap." "They do not use tricks," another officer pointed out. "They simply attack. Then it is some other enemy, some species we do not know." "The language patterns are ancient," I said quietly. All eyes turned to her. She was the youngest and lowest-ranking person in the room. She should not have spoken, but she continued anyway. The transmission protocol matches records from 8,000 years ago. If this is a trick, someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look authentic. Admiral OK glared at her. Are you suggesting that humans are real, Commander? That the myths are true? I am suggesting that we respond and find out. The debate went on for days. They were afraid to hope. They had been losing for so long that they had forgotten what hope felt like. But they were also desperate. They were getting closer to the core worlds every day. If there was even a small chance that help was real, could they afford to ignore it? Finally, the High Council gave a permission to respond. She sent a simple message. This is Commander of the Dominion. We have received your transmission. We are willing to negotiate. The response came within an hour. Acknowledged, Commander. Sending coordinates for meeting. Come alone or with a small delegation. We mean no harm. The coordinates pointed to a dead system far from both and space. A neutral place. A safe place. A volunteered to lead the delegation. Admiral OK insisted on coming with her. He still believed it was a trap, but if it was not, he wanted to see these legendary humans for himself. The journey took 3 days. I spent most of that time reading and rereading the old human records. She wanted to be prepared. She wanted to understand what she was about to meet. The dead system was exactly what its name suggested. The star had burned out long ago. The planets were shattered rocks, frozen and lifeless. It was a graveyard of worlds, empty and silent. But there was a ship waiting for them. It was smaller than I had expected. Battle cruisers were massive, built to impress and intimidate. This human vessel was compact and angular, with dark metal and sharp edges. It looked functional rather than beautiful. It looked like something built for a purpose. That is their ship, Admiral OK said with disbelief. It is smaller than our shuttle. I did not respond. She was studying the ship's design. There were weapons everywhere, she realized. Small ports and hidden bays that could hold missiles or guns. The ship was not unarmed. It was heavily armed and trying not to show it. A communication request came through. I accepted it, and a face appeared on her screen. It was a human face. Captain Daniel was not what she had imagined. He was old, with gray hair and weathered skin. His eyes were small and dark, set deep in his face. He had lines around his mouth and scars on his cheek. He looked tired, like someone who had been fighting for a very long time. But there was something else in his eyes, something steady and calm and unbreakable. Commander, he said. His voice was quiet and rough. Thank you for coming. You are human, she whispered. You are really human. We are, he smiled slightly. It did not reach his eyes. We have been watching your war with the... We have been debating whether to reveal ourselves. It was not an easy decision. Why did you hide? Admiral OK demanded. Why did you let the galaxy think you were dead? Because we almost were, Daniel replied. 8,000 years ago we faced an enemy worse than the... They nearly wiped us out. The survivors fled to the edge of the galaxy and hid. We rebuilt. We recovered. We waited. Waited for what? I asked. Daniel looked at her with those steady, unbreakable eyes. For the right moment to come back. We think that moment is now. The threat in everything. Not just your people, but all people. We cannot stand by and watch any longer. You want to help us? OK sounded suspicious. Why? What do you want in return? Daniel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. Because it is the right thing to do, and because if we do nothing, the will eventually come for us too. We learned long ago that you cannot hide from evil forever. Eventually, you have to stand up and fight. He leaned forward. We are offering to fight beside you, not for payment, not for territory, just because we can. The question is, will you accept our help? I looked at Admiral OK. The old officer still looked suspicious, but he also looked hopeful. She turned back to Daniel. Yes, she said. We accept. Meeting took place aboard the human ship. An Admiral OK left their guards behind and crossed the gap between vessels in a small shuttle. It was a sign of trust, or perhaps foolishness. OK kept his hand near his weapon the entire time. The inside of the human ship was strange. The hallways were narrow. The ceilings were low. Everything was built for creatures smaller than, and I had to bend her head to avoid hitting it on doorways. The air smelled different too, thick and warm and full of unfamiliar scents. A young human woman met them at the airlock. Her name was Lieutenant, and she was Daniel's second in command. She had brown hair pulled back from her face and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. She walked ahead of them through the narrow halls, and I noticed how smoothly she moved. There was no wasted motion. Every step was precise and controlled. They entered a meeting room with a round table and several chairs. Captain Daniel was already waiting for them. Two other humans stood behind him, a tall man with dark skin and a shorter woman with red hair. They were introduced as Commander Samuel Torres and Lieutenant Amy, his senior officers. I studied them carefully. They were so small. The tallest human in the room barely reached her shoulder. Their bodies looked soft and fragile. She could see the veins beneath their skin, blue and purple, carrying blood close to the surface. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. Their eyes were tiny compared to eyes. Is this the legendary human species? Admiral OK muttered quietly, though not quietly enough. They look like prey animals. I could break one with my bare hands. I saw Daniel's eyes flick toward OK. The human heard the comment, but he did not react. He simply smiled that small, tired smile and gestured for everyone to sit. Thank you for coming aboard our ship, Daniel said. I know this requires trust on your part. I hope we can prove that trust is well placed. We shall see, OK replied coldly. You have made grand claims about offering help, but I see only one small ship. How exactly do you plan to help us against the? They have thousands of vessels. They have consumed dozens of our worlds. We are aware of your situation, Daniel said calmly. We have been monitoring the war since it began. They are dangerous. They are numerous. They are without fear or mercy, but they can be beaten. With what? OK demanded. Words, hopes. You speak of standing up to fight, but I see nothing to fight with. Daniel did not seem offended by the Admiral's tone. He leaned back in his chair and looked at OK with those steady eyes. Admiral, I understand your doubt. Your people have been losing this war for months. You have watched your fleets destroyed and your colonies burned. You have seen enemies that seem unstoppable. It is natural to be afraid. OK's scales flushed dark with anger. I am not afraid. I simply see no reason to believe that a few soft-skinned creatures can make any difference against the. I held her breath. She expected Daniel to react with anger or offense. Instead, he nodded slowly. You are right to ask for proof. Words mean nothing without action, so let me offer you a demonstration. He touched a panel on the table, and a holographic map appeared in the air above them. It showed a star system that I recognized immediately. The system. It was a former mining colony, now occupied by a raiding fleet. 53 enemy ships had made it their base, using it to launch attacks against nearby worlds. This fleet has destroyed 7 of your convoys in the past month, Daniel said. Your military has sent 4 battle groups to stop them. All 4 were defeated. OK's jaw tightened. I am aware of our failures. You do not need to remind me. I am not reminding you to insult you. I am setting the context. Daniel zoomed in on the fleet. 53 ships, heavy cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. A significant force by any measure. And you propose to destroy them, OK laughed bitterly. With what? Your single ship? Yes. The room went silent. I stared at Daniel. She thought she had misheard him. You want to send 1 ship against 53. Not want, offer. Daniel's expression did not change. I am offering to send one human vessel to engage the fleet at a. If we succeed, you will have proof of what humans can do. If we fail, you will have lost nothing. OK looked at him like he was insane. This is madness. One ship cannot defeat 53. It is mathematically impossible. Admiral, Daniel said quietly, your people have believed humans are myths for 8,000 years. You thought we were extinct. Impossible. Yet here we sit. Perhaps your mathematics are not as reliable as you think. OK opened his mouth to argue, but he spoke first. Which ship would you send? Daniel nodded at Lieutenant, who pulled up another image. A ship appeared on the display. It was similar to the vessel they were on now, compact and angular and bristling with hidden weapons. The Relentless, Daniel said, commanded by Captain Hart. She has been fighting longer than most of my officers have been alive. If anyone can do this, she can. One ship, OK repeated, against 53. One ship, Daniel confirmed. We will broadcast the battle to your High Council so they can watch. They will see what humans are capable of. Then they can decide whether they want our help. I looked at the Admiral. She could see the conflict on his face. He did not believe this was possible, but he also could not refuse. If there was even a small chance that the humans could succeed, they needed to know. Very well, OK said finally. Send your ship, we will watch. Daniel stood and extended his hand. It was a human gesture, anew from the old records, a sign of agreement and trust. OK stared at the hand for a long moment, then reached out and grasped it. I hope you know what you are doing, the Admiral said. Daniel smiled that small, tired smile. So do I, Admiral, so do I. As they left the human ship, I felt something she had not felt in months. It was a strange sensation, warm and fluttering in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hoping. She did not know if the humans could really do what they promised. But for the first time since the war began, she believed that maybe, just maybe, something could change. She would find out soon enough. The Relentless arrived in the system on a cold morning, ship time. I watched from the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, which was stationed at a safe distance from the battle zone. Every major command center was receiving the same broadcast. The High Council, the admirals, the generals, millions of soldiers across dozens of worlds, all of them watching, all of them waiting to see if the humans were real or if this was the greatest joke in the galaxy. The Relentless was small. That was the first thing everyone noticed. Against the backdrop of the fleet, it looked like a bug flying toward a storm. The ships were massive, covered in spikes and armor, designed to terrify as much as to kill. The human vessel was smooth and dark and almost invisible against the void. This is suicide, Admiral OK muttered. He was standing beside her, his arms crossed, his face grim. We are about to watch these humans die. I did not respond. She was watching the Relentless move. There was something strange about the way it flew. Ships moved in straight lines, efficient and predictable. The Relentless seemed to dance, constantly shifting and adjusting, never staying in one place for more than a second. They detected the human ship almost immediately. The hive mind did not understand fear or caution. They saw an enemy, and they attacked. 23 ships broke from the fleet and moved to intercept. Here they come, someone whispered. The ships opened fire. Bright beams of energy crossed the void, converging on the tiny human vessel. The weapons were powerful enough to destroy a cruiser in seconds. The Relentless should have been vaporized. It was not. The human ship moved. Not just moved, but flowed like water around a stone. It twisted and rolled and spun, threading through the barrage with impossible precision. Beams that should have hit passed through empty space. Missiles that should have connected struck nothing but darkness. And then the Relentless fired back. Its weapons were not especially powerful. I could see that from the sensor readings. They were similar in strength to technology, perhaps even slightly weaker, but every shot hit, every single one. The human gunners did not miss. 3 ships exploded in the first 10 seconds. The bridge of the Eternal Dawn went silent. How, okay, breathed, how are they doing that? A remembered her grandmother's words. Persistence predators, they do not stop, they adapt, they find a way. The changed tactics. They stopped firing in straight lines and began to spread out, trying to surround the human vessel. It was a good strategy. Even the best pilot could not dodge attacks from every direction at once. But the Relentless adapted. Captain Hart's voice came through the communication channel, calm and steady despite the chaos around her. All hands, pattern Delta. I need those shields boosted to port. Stephen, bring us around to heading 047. Let's show them what we can do. The ship moved again, faster this time. But it was more than just speed. The Relentless seemed to anticipate where they would fire before they fired. It was always in the wrong place for the enemy and the right place for itself. They are reading the patterns, O realized. They are predicting the attacks. That is impossible, OK said. They are a hive mind, they should be unpredictable. No, A said slowly. A hive mind is actually more predictable. One mind makes one decision. The humans are exploiting that. The battle continued. The Relentless destroyed ship after ship, dancing through the formation like a ghost. But it was not invincible. Hits began to land. Small ones at first, then larger ones. The human shields flickered and flashed. Then something went wrong. A lucky shot struck the Relentless in its primary weapons array. The entire port side of the ship went dark. A heard alarms blaring through the communication channel. The human ship stumbled, its graceful movements suddenly clumsy. They are crippled, OK said. It is over. But it was not over. A new voice came through the channel, rough and tired. Captain, this is in engineering. I can fix this, but I need 10 minutes. We do not have 10 minutes, replied calmly. Then give me 5, I will make it work. I watched in disbelief as the Relentless kept fighting with half its weapons gone. The human pilots adjusted instantly, changing their attack patterns to compensate. They used their remaining guns with even more precision, making every shot count twice as much. And in the engineering section, something impossible was happening. Was building a new weapons array out of spare parts. He was taking components from 3 different systems, things that were never designed to work together, and forcing them to connect. It should not have worked. The pieces did not fit. The power requirements were wrong. Everything about it was wrong. But he made it work anyway. 5 minutes and 32 seconds later, the Relentless fired again with full power. They did not know how to respond. They had damaged the human ship. They had seen it weaken. It should have died or fled. Instead, it came back stronger. This did not fit their understanding of how the universe worked. For the first time, the hive mind felt something close to confusion. And confused enemies made mistakes. The Relentless pressed its advantage. Captain Hart pushed her ship harder than any machine should be pushed. When the shields failed completely, she ordered power rerouted from life support. The crew fought in freezing darkness, their breath forming clouds in the air. When the helm officer, Stephen, took shrapnel to his arm, he refused to leave his post. He flew with one hand, his broken arm hanging useless at his side, his face pale with pain but his eyes still sharp. When the medical bay was destroyed, the ship's doctor moved to the cargo hold and kept treating wounded with whatever supplies he could find. They did not give up, they did not slow down, they did not stop. 4 hours after the battle began, the Relentless had destroyed 31 ships. The remaining 22 fled into deep space, running from a single enemy they could not understand. The communication channel was silent for a long moment. Then Captain Hart's voice came through, tired but steady. A system clear, enemy forces routed, Relentless returning to base for repairs. Admiral OK stood frozen. His mouth was open. His eyes were wide. He looked like someone who had just watched the sun rise in the wrong direction. "What?" he whispered. "What are they?" I finally understood. She finally knew what her grandmother had been trying to tell her all those years ago. "They are human," she said softly, "and they do not know how to give up." News of a spread through the Dominion like fire through dry grass. Within hours, everyone knew. The humans were real. The humans were here. And the humans had just defeated 53 ships with a single vessel. The effect was immediate and powerful. Species who had given up hope began to hope again. Soldiers who had been retreating started talking about fighting back. Worlds that had been preparing for surrender began preparing for war instead. The myth of human invincibility spread faster than the truth could follow, growing larger and more impressive with every telling. Captain Daniel did not correct the exaggerations. He understood something that many did not. In war, belief was a weapon. If the enemy thought humans were unstoppable, they would hesitate. If allies thought humans were invincible, they would fight harder. The truth mattered less than the effect. And the effect was remarkable. The human fleet emerged from hiding 3 weeks after a 300 ships rose from the void like ghosts returning to life. They were not enough to win the war alone. The still had thousands of vessels, millions of soldiers, endless hunger. But the humans did not need to win alone. They just needed to light the spark. A now promoted to captain of her own vessel watched the human fleet arrive at prime. The of her people floated in the darkness, blue and green and beautiful. Soon it would be the site of the largest battle in recorded history. They were coming. The hive mind had learned from They knew humans were dangerous now. They knew these strange, soft creatures could not be ignored. So they gathered their forces, pulled ships from across the galaxy, and launched everything they had at the heart of the Dominion. 4,000 vessels entered space on a cold morning. They came in waves, dark and hungry, blocking out the stars. The defense fleet was outnumbered 3-1. Even with the humans, the odds were terrible. But odds had stopped meaning much to her. She stood on the bridge of her ship, the Swift Dawn, and watched the enemy approach. Beside her in the fleet was the Relentless, fully repaired and ready for battle. Captain Hart's voice came through the communication channel, calm as always. "All ships, this is Hart. Remember your training, stay with your wing leaders, and whatever happens, do not stop fighting. We do not know how to do that anyway." I smiled despite the fear in her chest. She had learned much about humans in the past weeks. She had learned that they were not actually invincible. They got tired. They got hurt. They made mistakes. But they also did something that no other species seemed to do. When everything was against them, when defeat seemed certain, when any reasonable creature would give up, humans got angry instead. And angry humans were terrifying. The battle began with fire and fury. Thousands of ships clashed in the space above Prime. Beams of energy crossed the void. Missiles streaked through the darkness. Ships exploded in flowers of flame and debris. I fought alongside the Relentless, learning from the human tactics. She watched how they moved, how they adapted, how they turned every setback into an opportunity. When her weapons failed, she remembered and ordered her engineers to improvise. When her shields collapsed, she remembered Captain Hart and fought in the darkness. All around her, others were doing the same. The humans were teaching them, not with words or lectures, but with example. They showed them what stubborn courage looked like. They showed them what it meant to refuse to accept defeat. Commander Laura, flying a fighter that had taken so much damage it should not have been flying at all, spotted an opening in the formation. A command ship, larger than the rest, was coordinating the hive mind's movements. If it fell, the entire fleet would be confused. Laura did not have missiles. She did not have functional weapons of any kind. But she had a ship, and she had engines, and she had the absolute certainty that sometimes you had to do impossible things. She aimed her fighter at the command ship's engine intake and accelerated to maximum speed. At the last second, she ejected. Her pod tumbled through the battle while her fighter struck the enemy vessel and detonated. The explosion tore through the command ship, destroying its control systems and killing hundreds of leaders. Laura was picked up by a rescue craft 2 hours later. She had broken bones in 3 places and burns across half her body. She was unconscious but alive. She had won. The loss of the command ship threw the into chaos. For the first time, the hive mind was divided. Different groups gave conflicting orders. Ships collided with each other. The perfect coordination that had made them so dangerous began to fall apart. The combined fleet pressed the advantage, and human ships fought side by side, pushing the back, destroying their vessels one by one. Captain coordinated the battle from his flagship even as it burned around him, transferring to smaller ships twice when his vessels took critical damage. By the time night fell on Prime, they were in full retreat. They had lost over 2,000 ships. They had lost a dozen command mines. They had lost something more important than any of that. They had lost the belief that they could not be stopped. In the days that followed, they pulled back to their own space. They did not disappear, and the war was not over. Years of hard fighting remained, but the tide had turned. Everyone could feel it. Admiral OK found Captain on the bridge of a borrowed cruiser, staring out at the debris field where the battle had been fought. The old looked tired and wounded and humbled. "I owe you an apology," OK said quietly. "I called your people prey animals. I said you looked weak. I was a fool." Shook his head. "You were not wrong. We are soft. We are slow. We are fragile compared to your people, but that has never mattered much to us." "Why?" OK asked. "Why did you help us? We forgot you. We called you myths. We did not deserve your aid." Was quiet for a long time. He watched the rescue ships moving through the wreckage, human and crews working together to save survivors. "Because that is what humans do," he said finally. "We remember, we come back, and we never abandon anyone to fight alone." Years later, when the war was finally over, A would tell stories to her own. She would tell them about the day the humans returned. She would tell them about Captain and Captain Hart and Laura and all the others who refused to give up. And across the Dominion, in libraries and schools and homes, the old records were opened again. But now they were joined by new ones, records of humans as allies, as friends, as heroes. The never forgot again. And somewhere in the archives, alongside the ancient myths, a new entry was added. It was simple, just a few words, but it said everything that needed to be said. The humans came back. They were everything the legend said and more.